If you look at the situation the Mets are in, and if you look at the situation that Pete is in, the Mets have all the leverage. So I keep hearing that Pete Alonso and his agent Scott Boras have proposed a 3-year contract to the Mets with opt-outs. And that's all well and good. So you could say, well, that's great. It's not a 7-year deal, which is what he turned down and which he's going to regret turning down. I guarantee you that. So when Billy Epler was the GM, they offered him $158 million for 7 years, and he turned it down. He will not get that contract again. Now, he might get an average annual value a little bit higher, but the 3-year deal that everybody talks about, it's kind of laughable. What if he's asking for 3 years at $120 million? The Mets don't have to do anything. The market is not there for Pete Alonso. Every team that had come into the season needing a first baseman have essentially gotten a first baseman. And they've done it in a way that is quite more economical than the big contract that Boras is seeking for Pete Alonso. For a while there, it was said that the Yankees had interest in Pete Alonso. Not true. They never did. They never did. Now, you could spin it any which way you want, but the Yankees are not giving a 30-year-old first baseman 7 years. Those days are over, and that's what's running against Pete Alonso right now. There's a couple things running against him. First basemen historically in the age of 30 or higher don't do well with long-term contracts. They don't age well. Pete Alonso's coming off a bad year. The only reason that you Met fans out there are even clamoring a bit for the Mets to do anything they can to bring Pete Alonso back is because of the home run he had against Devin Williams in the Milwaukee series. That's it. Because before that, you were done with Pete Alonso. He didn't have a good year. A lot of strikeouts, not as many home runs. But that home run made you fall back in love with him all over again. Great. He's lovable. He's the polar bear. He's the guy that's come up through the system. He's the guy that has a chance to spend his entire career as a New York Met, finish with 500 home runs. And to that I say, you know what? Get over that. There have been great players before that left teams that they came up with. If you're a Met fan, you have to say, do I trust in Steve Cohen and do I trust in David Stearns? And right now, David Stearns holds all the cards. Where is Pete Alonso going? Why would he give him $30 million a year other than the fact that it's a gold watch, extra $5 million that you're giving him because he's a homegrown Met and the fans love him? That's it. That's the only reason. I say that Pete Alonso should get anywhere from $24 to $25 million for 3 years. If the Mets give him $100 million for 3 years, they're out of their minds. Now, Andy Martino, who I mentioned we're going to have at 1:30, he has a story on SNY.TV, which is very interesting. And I think it bodes very poorly for Pete Alonso. In the story, and what we'll get into it with Andy when he's on, it essentially says that Steve Cohen is going to abide by what David Stearns wants to do. He trusts him. He's not going to put his hand in this one just to bring Pete back at a higher salary and more years because he thinks the fans want it and because he likes Pete. There are things that I think that Steve Cohen will Bigfoot David Stearns on. I think the Juan Soto deal was all Steve Cohen because David Stearns, who's very smart, who sees the market for what it is, probably would have not given a 15-year, $810 million contract to Juan Soto. Probably. But this was the white whale for Steve Cohen, and he was not going to lose him. And I think David Stearns knew that and probably was part of the rules of engagement when he signed there. And before David Stearns even got there, Steve Cohen also made it a point to lock up Francisco Lindor. Those are the players that he bigfooted his GMs on. Probably the right move. Because sometimes you've got to be irrational to get things done. But the Pete Alonso situation is not a time that you have to be irrational. Why would you? Tell me the team that he's going to. Tell me the team that you're bidding against. Tell me how this impacts your team to such an extent that you're not going to be able to compete for a playoff spot. The Mets have so many options at first base. They could move Vientos there. They could sign Bregman to play third. They could move Vientos there, and they could use any of their young players at third. So many things that they could do rather than pour all that money into Pete Alonso. Now, one other thing, that's the elephant in the room, and I think a lot of the reason that a lot of teams took a one-year approach to their first base problem, like the Yankees did with Goldschmidt. Vlad Guerrero has 1 year left on his deal with the Toronto Blue Jays, and it doesn't look like they're getting any traction to get a deal done. And he's already set a limit. He's going to negotiate up to the first game of spring training, and after that, he's not negotiating at all. And by the way, I think that's moronic. And I'm not just talking about Vlad. I'm talking about any player who goes, you know what, I'm setting a limit, and once the season starts, I'm not going to negotiate anymore. Well, first of all, it's not you in the room. It's your agent. And if the Mets want to call up Vlad Guerrero's or the Blue Jays want to call up Vlad Guerrero's agent on April 15th and offer him $40 million a year for 10 years, you mean to tell me that Vlad Guerrero's, nope, I set a limit. So ridiculous. You don't have to be involved in the negotiations. You can tell your agent, get it done. If it hits a number, come back to me. I don't want to hear it all the time. I don't want to be distracted. But, of course, you can negotiate. I love the big tough guy approach. I'm not negotiating after this point. Good. Don't negotiate. Then, if you break your leg, you're going to be sorry that you didn't negotiate. But I digress. Why would you sign Pete Alonso to a long-term deal if there's a chance that you could get Vlad Guerrero, who could be another one of those players where Steve Cohen is going to tell his GM, I'll take care of this. And Vlad Guerrero is going to hit the free agent market at 27. Pete Alonso's 30. And if you want proof of how late contracts for first basemen age, check out Albert Pujols. Check out Miguel Cabrera. Awful. Those contracts aged awful. You want a contract that aged well? Freddie Freeman. Putting up the same WAR that he always has. But Pete Alonso coming into this offseason is coming in with about a 2 WAR. That's not worth the money that he's demanding. He either has to come really down in his expectations for himself, or he's not going back to the Mets. He's just not. And when you talk about the 1 year option, you can say, well, that opens them up for Vlad Guerrero. No, it doesn't, because it's his option. The problem that Pete Alonso has is that he fired his agent after the 7-year, $158 million offer that the Mets gave. Hired Scott Boras. So Scott Boras obviously knows he has to get more than 7 years, $158. Not happening. I've told you all over the years, over these 22 years that I've spoken with you, I think Scott Boras is great for the player. Great, smart. But sometimes he misreads the market, like he did last year with Snell, like he did with Montgomery, like he did with Chapman. He misread it. Now you can say, well, it was a great bounce back that he had with Juan Soto. Let me let you in on a little secret, and this by no means is disparaging to Scott Boras. I could have represented Juan Soto and gotten that deal. I could have. And I'm not that bright. When you have a great player who's young and everybody wants, there is no limit. But when you represent a 30-year-old first baseman that not everybody wants and you're still commanding big money, it's not happening. Everywhere they've turned, they've run into a problem. Yeah, everybody thought the Tigers were a possibility. Well, then the Tigers signed Gleyber Torres and they moved Colt Keith over to first. There's 2 teams left over that might be of some interest. Seattle, who really doesn't want to spend that kind of money. And before they even think about spending that kind of money, well, they've got to try to trade Castillo to get his $24 million a year off the books. And then you do wonder, if they trade Castillo and they sign Pete, Does that make them better? I don't know. I don't think it does. Then the Angels are another possibility. They have Nolan Schanuel over at first, who doesn't hit for enough power, obviously, to be a corner infielder. But I don't think that the Angels are going to go there either. All Scott has to do is find one dumb owner. That's always been the saying. Just find one dumb owner. But baseball's gotten too smart. The guys that are running baseball operations are as smart as Scott Boras. In the past, Scott Boras could flex because he was smarter than the average GM, who was probably an ex-player, a grizzled old ex-player, who didn't have the information overload that these MIT, Harvard, Yale, Princeton guys have. Just didn't have it. I've told you the story before. When Scott Boras was in his heyday, he would give a binder to each team of his prospective free agents, and it would have these eye-opening statistics. He doesn't do that anymore. Why? Because everybody has those statistics. And what the statistics tell every single GM, including David Stearns, you don't invest that much money in a first baseman that's 30 years or older. And you certainly don't give him all those years. So I actually feel for Pete Alonso. Good guy, been a good citizen. Met fans seem to like him. They seem to love him. And I see why. He's an endearing figure. Homegrown guy. And the Mets haven't had a lot of those. But you can't throw good money after bad. It doesn't make sense. It's a dumb play. Steve Cohen has made $22 billion in his life because he's smart. He's not dumb. Steve Cohen waited a full year to bring in David Stearns, to wait for David Stearns to be available. He's too smart to take away David Stearns' authority on this play. Why? Because the fans like Pete Alonso? Silly. And if you give him a long-term contract, you're roadblocking yourself to the chance that you might get Vlad Guerrero. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret, everybody. Vlad Guerrero, to me, I'm not throwing huge amounts of dollars at him. He's had shape issues in terms of like coming into camp in shape or last year he was great. The year before he was awful. He's had an up and down career. He's not the best first baseman in the world, and you don't know what you're going to get from him on a year-to-year basis. Would I take a run at him? Yeah, I would. Would I go crazy and empty the bank like I did for Soto? Absolutely not. That's not that player. So you can't get too giddy about it. But David Stearns has war gamed this whole thing. He knows who's out there. He knows where he could pivot. He knows exactly which way he could go. But to overpay for a guy because he's a homegrown Met is dumb. It's dumb. I think the problem with Pete Alonso was that he saw what Aaron Judge got. And he got Judge envy. Oh, that's what I deserve. I'm a homegrown Met. He's a homegrown Yankee. Blah, 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 blah. I deserve what he makes, which is $40 million a year, 9 years, $360. But Pete has to come back down to earth. He's not near the player that Aaron Judge is. He might be near the power hitter Aaron Judge is, but he's not the average hitter. He's not the on-base percentage guy. He's not the OPS guy. He's not the WAR guy. I think Pete Alonso's WAR last year was like 2.1. Judge's was over 10. He's not the defender that Judge is. He's not the base runner that Judge is. So just because you play in the same city and you're a homegrown guy does not dictate that you get money that's commensurate to what Aaron Judge got. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to think like that. So I think with all the maneuvering that's gone on, Pete Alonso has put himself into a corner with no place to turn other than to accept a deal that's far under the one that he turned down at 7 years, 158. Far under. Now, if somehow Boras could get some team to bite on the 3-year, $90 million deal, God bless him. God bless him. It's funny, though, because we always talk, we don't pay that much attention to average annual value. Because we always say, well, it's the total value that you get. Well, if you got him $90 million for 3 years, well, you know what happened? He lost $68 million from the deal that he turned down. Over 4 years, more. But if Pete signs that 3-year deal and has a meh year this year, he's not going to opt out. So the next time that he becomes a free agent is when? Going into his age 34 season, game over. Game's over. So my message to Met fans, you better get over it. And you better not try to pressure your owner and your GM to sign this guy at any cost. He's not that player. He's a good player. He's not a sign him at any cost player. I think David Stearns knows it. And I believe that Steve Cohen knows it. You can't throw good dollars after bad. If there's a team that starts bidding and you actually have somebody that you're bidding against, then that's a legitimate reason to up your offer. The fact that there reportedly is a 3-year offer on the table from Boris's side to the Mets and they haven't taken it tells you that the average annual value of that deal is probably ridiculous. He's probably looking for over $40 million a year. Crazy. Why would you do it? What first baseman gets that? Tell me what first baseman gets that. Look at the first base. All I ask all of you, look at the first baseman contracts. So the Yankees gave a big deal to Mark Teixeira. And Mark Teixeira helped them win a World Series in 2009. But the second half of the 8-year deal, he was terrible. He was injured all the time. It was not worth the money. Jason Giambi got a big money deal from the Yankees. I don't know if they would do it again, but probably not worth the money. Probably not worth the money. Prince Fielder got a big money deal. Got hurt, and obviously that was not a good contract. I'll go chapter and verse with first baseman. And Pete doesn't have the body that looks like it's going to stand up. Maybe it will. I'm not an expert on that. But the Mets can't bid against themselves. The offer I would give him right now, we'll give you $75 for 3 years. I know you're risking that you're insulting him, but this is big business, baby. If you insult somebody and you hurt their feelings, well, get over it. Are we insulted if you're asking for, the moon and we don't want to give you the moon? Well, we're going to give you what we think is market value for a first baseman. We're going to look at what Matt Olson gets. We're going to look at what Freddie Freeman gets. And then we're going to offer you a contract. We're not going to offer you a contract based on the hopes and dreams of your agent. We're not going to do it. 1-800-919-3776. Let's go to the phones, and let's go to Dave. He's on the car phone. Hello, Dave.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Good. What's up, man?
I'm not a Yankee fan, but I'm not a Met hater.
Okay.
And I would give Pete Alonso, like you said, he's going to regret the 158. He's never going to get there. I agree with you there. This is where I disagree, okay? This is a George Steinbrenner thing. It's not a Derek Jeter thing, okay? He called Winfield Mr. May. This guy Alonso, it's not just one home run you're talking about. He had 4 home runs in the postseason. He's not a postseason 120 hitter like Aaron Judge. He doesn't drop the ball that a 2-year-old would have done like Aaron Judge, okay? Yankee fans don't care if Aaron Judge hits 200 home runs this year in the regular season. You know that, and I know that. They're not going to be jumping up and down clapping. They're going to be thinking, oh, my God, what happened in the playoffs? Pete Alonso hits some big home runs.
I'm gonna push back on you a little bit. There's no way you're a Yankee fan if you're talking like that about Judge. There's no way. There's no way.
Hey, I'm the biggest Jeter fan in the world. Anything you ask me about the guy, I'll tell you. I think if anybody compares,
but you think that a smart Yankee fan doesn't care if Aaron Judge hits 200 home runs in 2025. They only care about the postseason.
All they care about is the playoffs.
Well, that's their problem, man. That's their problem. You got to get to the playoffs, dude. You got to get to the playoffs.
That's Derek Jeter. He says it every time. He doesn't care if they lose, if they don't make the playoffs, if they lose in Game 7 of the World Series. Derek Jeter said a million times, you lose, you lose. That's it. Aaron Judge does not produce in the playoffs. Pete Alonso did. That's the bottom line.
What did the Mets win? What did the Mets win with Pete Alonso producing? Tell me, what did they win?
Who did the Mets play? They played the same team that the Yankees played.
Yeah, I know. But what did they win? Did they go to the World Series? You're saying that he produced. Okay, hit the big home run. They had a couple of home runs in the series after that. He had a terrible season. So what I'm asking you, Dave,
He
what
did
would
have
you
a
give him
terrible
then?
season.
What
You're
would
absolutely right. I'm not going to argue with you.
What would you give him? What would you give him? Tell me what you would give him. I'm asking you what you would give him.
Being a homegrown guy, and everybody in the team likes him. He's a good in the clubhouse. The fans love him. What I say, I would give him, you would hang up the phone. Give him 4 years at 80. Give him 4 years at 100, or 4 years at 120. I
wouldn't. No. I would give him 4 years at 100. I definitely would. I think you're right. But I mean, if you're looking for over $30 million a year or $40 million a year, you're out of your mind. I give him $25 million a year. He's worth that. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I love the fact, and that's a problem with Yankee fans, I'm going to tell you. And it's a problem that's the mindset of the organization. Either you win the World Series or it's a failure. It's a terrible mindset. Terrible. And I know that George Steinbrenner said it. He said it a long time ago in a place far, far away, and the sport was completely different. And Derek Jeter has kept it going, and you know what? Aaron Judge is as well. And it puts pressure on players that they don't need that kind of pressure. It only makes it tougher in a very tough sport. But to say that what a guy does in the regular season doesn't mean anything, do you forget? Okay, Aaron Judge dropped the fly ball in the fifth inning. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Had a double and a home run, too. You forget the home run he hit against Clase? So the big numbers weren't there. But he did get big hits. He had a double, 2 walks, and a home run in Game 5. But we forget that because they lost and he dropped the ball. People's mindset has to change. And also, what our caller just said, well, he's a good guy. Who cares? Some of the best players in baseball history were miserable human beings, terrible people. Lawrence Taylor's one of the greatest football players of all time. Really? You want him over for Thanksgiving? With the stuff that he's done, he's been proven to have done? I mean, if we're going to judge people on nice guy, okay, then give Pete Alonso $50 million a year. There's a lot of people making a lot of money contributing to their team. They're creeps. They're creeps. You don't pay somebody because they're a nice guy and that the fans like them. That's dumb. It's dumb. Oh, he's a nice guy. So what? Well, he's homegrown. So what? What's he worth? Let's put it down into a computer sheet, and what does it spit out? And I'm telling you, the Mets have it spitting out that he's not worth the money that he's asking for. Let's go to Gooch in Queens. Gooch.
Mike, how you doing, Mike?
Good.
Mike,
what's up, man?
I got a question only you could answer, Mike. If Aaron Judge, as great as he is, does not get a World Series ring, does he still go to the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
I knew you would say that, Mike. Love you.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think the Hall of Fame, Gooch, is sometimes used as a tiebreaker because if you look at the numbers of Mattingly and Kirby Puckett, they're almost identical. Kirby Puckett's in the Hall of Fame because he won 2 World Series at the Twins. Donnie never went to one. That's the tiebreaker. But if Aaron Judge hits 500 home runs and he already has won 2 MVPs, some would argue he should have had a third, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame player. Ted Williams didn't get a ring. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I know we concentrate on the championship. I get it, and that's the finishing touch. That's the cherry on the sundae. But there's no doubt with his arc going the way it is that Aaron Judge is a Hall of Famer. If he never, ever wins a World Series ring, has nothing to do with it. Shouldn't have anything to do with it. Let's go to Dove and Passaic. Dove.
Hey, good afternoon, Michael. Great
Hello.
show as always.
Thank
I'll
you.
tell you the truth. I'm very, very upset about this whole Guerrero situation. If the Yankees signed Goldschmidt because they are planning on in 2026 being all in on Guerrero, that's a very stupid strategy. It's asinine. Guerrero said he doesn't want to play for the Yankees, and now they're going to hold out. We're going to go with less of a first baseman because we think that we're going to be in on him.
Well,
That's
who's the
number
first baseman?
one.
Wait a minute. Who's the first baseman that they didn't sign?
Christian Walker. I don't mind that they missed out on him, but they didn't make a bid on him. That's the problem I have.
Well, because look at the money he got. They didn't want to put that money into it. And Dove, it's not so much Guerrero, okay, that the Yankees are worried about. The Yankees have to plan for the future with Aaron Judge, 6'7", 282. He's not going to play the outfield forever. At some point, they're going to transition him to first base. They can't tie up first base for multiple years. That could be the year they want to move Aaron Judge to first base. I don't think they have a shot at Vlad Guerrero.
I agree to what you're saying, but there are two other points that I want to make. Christian Walker was only in for 3 years, so that might have been perfect. And he also, I mean, you could always slot someone over. I mean, they have to expect that Stanton's going to be out. They have to at least 40 to 100 games. He's going to miss. So if you got a player like Arise, he can't field, but you know what? It doesn't matter because someone has to take his place. I don't think the Yankees should be thinking about what they can get next year. They have to worry about now.
No, Dove, I respectfully disagree. I'm sorry. That's not the way business is done. You have to think 3-4 years down the line. Of course you have to think about next year, and you want to field the best team that you could this year. Paul Goldschmidt's a really good player. I know he's older, but a couple of years ago he won the MVP. And is he going to put up better numbers than Anthony Rizzo has the last 2 years? Yes. Yankee first baseman has been a black hole the last 2 years. With Anthony Rizzo's injuries and the lack of performance by everybody they put in there? No. Absolutely you have to think about the future. You can't just think 1 year and then think about the next year. You're going to run contrary to what you need to do. That's a bad way to run a business. Just think about this year. No, you'll end up being a bad team. Let's load up for this year, not worry about 2026. Those things are planned out. They've got plans for like the next 5 years. Their A plan, their B plan, their C plan. That's what a good organization does. Sure, the Dodgers have plans out 5 years. You don't just think about this coming year. You think about people that are coming up through your system. You think about potential free agents. All of those things have to be taken into account. It's silly not to.